Hello, it's Mark Lanier with your video thought for the day. So this week I'm looking at words that in the Hebrew have a meaning to a common body part, but are actually used to talk about God. And the young reader of the Bible will often think this means God must have body parts, or maybe the writers of the Old Testament were primitive and thought God had body parts. And that's not the case. What it is the Hebrew language doesn't have even remotely as many vocabulary words as we do in English. The Hebrew Old Testament's got somewhere between 6,000 and 8,000 words, depending on how you count names. But the average American adult has somewhere around 4 times as many words in their everyday vocabulary. And if we count the words that are in the back of your brain that you sort of know, but you're not sure if you were pushed to it to give a definition, maybe as many as 8 to 10 times as many words. And so those Hebrew words don't really have a one-to-one equivalent in English, because one Hebrew word needs to do the function of maybe 6, 8, or even 10 English words. So that's true with the words for body parts. Now, if I'm talking in English and I say, here's my hand, I'm generally talking about that appendage that's at the end of my arm. But in Hebrew, the Hebrew word for hand, yod, is not simply a reference to the hand at the end of your wrist. That Hebrew word yod can reference the strength or the control that someone has, the power that someone has. And so this idea of hand is true, yod is true for people, and it's also helping us understand God. So like in 1 Kings 11, God talks about how he's going to tear the kingdom, 10 tribes of the kingdom, away from the hand of Solomon, or Solomon's offspring. That doesn't mean that Solomon's offspring had the kingdoms of Israel in his physical hand, but it means under his control or under his power. He had those kingdoms, and those tribes would be ripped away from his hand, his control, his power. Now, if we understand this, we can begin to understand some interesting passages of Scripture. For example, in Luke explains when Jesus was hanging on the cross and about to die, Jesus said to God, "Into your hands I commit my spirit." Jesus wasn't saying into the physical hands of God, because God doesn't have physical hands like this. But Jesus was referencing the idea of hands as power and control. And he was saying, God, I'm going to give you the control and the power over my spirit. I've got it no more. I'm dying. I'm trusting it to God's control. And that's a special passage to me. But it's especially important for us to link that passage up to one we find in the Psalms. Psalm 31, verse 15. The psalmist says, "My times are in your hands, O God. Deliver me." Listen to that. My times, what's going on in my life, I put into your control, God. It's in your hands. You've got it now. That's a prayer I pray quite regularly. Probably not regularly enough, but quite regularly. God, this is in your hands. This is under your control. I'm giving this to you, trusting in your strength, trusting in your creative power, trusting in your abilities to do what's best. Not a bad place to be today. And that's my video thought for the day.